So I wanted to talk about the Stillin and where it began. And my process of writing has been a little unconventional. My first experience writing a novel, I left where I lived. I couldn't live and write in the same location. I was living in Calgary, Alberta at the time, and I had left and went back to where I spent my childhood, which was Lake of the Woods, Ontario. And it became the backdrop for me to focus in on what it was that I was trying to create, which was this enormous story that became the Stillin. Now, when I first wrote Into the Shaman's Son, almost 20 years ago now, it served as a story about a family that was struggling and trying to find the source of the problem that was affecting them. And when I finished that story, it became much more to me over the course of time. And I didn't know how to publish that story. I didn't know how to edit it. I didn't know where to begin in terms of finding an agent or how to even get to the point of finding somebody that would represent me to get it published. So I left it. And in fact, that stayed in a box. That laptop stayed in a box for a long time. And it wasn't until I stumbled upon it and I pulled out that laptop and I started to think about where the story began and how I was going to get that story off, because the laptop was quite old and I had to use aging architecture to try to figure out how to get the story off, and this is what I had. And yeah, so floppy drives, hard disk floppy drives, to try to get it off with modern day technology. It was quite the chore, but when I did, I wasn't satisfied with what I had created. I felt that after this amount of time, my writing had matured so much that I needed to rewrite it, and I did. So when I finished writing that, I kept going, and I ended up writing 6 novels afterwards. And the 5th one I felt was the one I wanted to approach publishing first, and that's the Stillin. So the Stillin serves as a backdrop for the very first story, Into the Shaman's Son, because it's much older. The story I've written is 110 years old. So it's in 1914 as of this recording. It's 110 years ago. And World War I is about to begin. And leading up to that, there was an assassination of a Duke and Duchess that created ripples that started the foundations of World War I. And many of the wealthy elite from around the world who were invested into North America were pulling out their investments because they knew something was about to begin. And the family in my story from France, their last name is LaChance. They have deep ties to all of this, and they become part of this initiative, this clawback of financial investment, except for one investment that was done by Philippe LaChance, which was the creation of a hotel. Now, at that point in time, the only way to get across Canada was by train, and if you had a hotel that was within proximity to a train station, you had a greater opportunity of it being successful. And he situated his in one of the most beautiful places I have ever seen in my life, which is Lake of the Woods, Ontario. And he built it with the initiative that it was going to serve as a sort of millionaire's escape. And as he's preparing to go be present for the hotel's grand opening. His daughter is just arrived from Paris, France, from art school, and she doesn't want to go. And so she doesn't have much of a choice. Her mother, Penelope, and her father decide that she has to come. At her age, at 17 years old, she needs to be with her parents. And so the family is now relocating to be present for this grand opening in Canada. But they don't know, or at least Penelope and Marguerite, they have no idea what Philippe is really doing and what he has done. Now, the hotel that he's built was built upon land that was safeguarded. It wasn't necessarily a place that the indigenous of the area wanted any part of, because there was an oral legend tied to this property that kept them away from it. So the legend goes that every 30 years, darkness rises and it consumes those that come too close. And generally speaking, it's usually the youth that are the ones that succumb to this darkness. Now, the darkness is called the Stillin, and it's been given this name from this family. Now, it's tied to what I have called the Beartalkers, and they are the lumber barons of the area that also have assisted with the development of the hotel. Now, it's a contentious relationship because Francois Beartalker, who is the head of this lumber mill, is married to the shaman of the area. Her name is Angèle. And Angèle has the responsibility of being the guardian of sorts for their community and ensuring that they're protected and their family is protected from this rising darkness. Now, because they're assisting with the development of a hotel on land that no one was supposed to be on, it's been quite problematic for her, because now she's beginning to witness that a number of the people that were working there are going missing, including community members. And this is where the story begins. So the hotel's been under construction for 4 years. It's preparing to open. The LaChance family are heading to be present for the hotel's grand opening. And the Beartalker family are aware that the LaChances are going to be coming. Now, their grandson, Jonathan, he's worked at the lumber mill since, well, he was a kid. And he's 17 years old. And the hotel, as he knows, is preparing to open. And he wants to be present. He wants to see this hotel for the very first time. Even though he's been told never to set foot on this property, his curiosity is getting the best of him. And I think we've all, in our teenage years, have been told something, what not to do. And you would do it. You would do it because you're curious. And you don't want to have to be told what not to do, I guess. Or at least maybe I was. And Jonathan is going. He's paddling there. The sun's going down. He's going to be present. And this is chapter 1. This is the beginning of my story. This is where it all starts. And there's a third part to the story. Now, I'm just going to lay the groundwork for how this story unfolds. So this third part is the Springfield Brothers Circus. Now, they're coming from the United States. They're leaving their circuit. And the head of this circus is Tobias Springfield. He's the last of his family to head the circus. And he's beginning to witness the economy is starting to dry up. And every one of their stops is becoming less beneficial. And he hasn't been able to pay his staff or his circus workers. And as a result, he knows that other circuses have been collapsing because he's been taking on some of these leftovers in when circuses do collapse. And this is actually a part of what really did take place around this point in time. And he knows that if he doesn't make a radical change in terms of trying to stave off what's coming, then he's going to lose everything. So he gambles the futures of everyone aboard his circus train and goes on an unknown route into Canada to go be present for his friend's hotel's grand opening. Now, he has a relationship going back to their college years with Philippe LaChance, and he is aware that this hotel is going to be having all of these affluent individuals present for this important night. So he makes an offer of having his circus become another entertainment, so to speak. And as this agreement is made and he heads north and he arrives into Canada, he becomes privy to some important details that weren't necessarily shared before he left, which is that there is something happening at the hotel with its workers going missing. And this piques his interest. He gets pretty excited. Now, I won't go too much further into the story because I don't want to give away too much. But it becomes an added insight for him to want to go a step further. And he's thinking to himself, well, I've got lions and these enormous animals from Africa. Why wouldn't I try and catch this thing that is sparking all this fear? Because fear draws people in. And with that interest in him wanting to capture one of these things, these Stillin, this darkness, he's willing to gamble again. So when they all arrive, and I'll kind of leave it at that, but when they all arrive at the hotel grounds, it becomes an additional magnifier within the outlying area that a lot of people want to be present to see the circus, because a lot of people have never seen a circus. And this is in a very remote area, and it becomes almost like a moth to a flame, and it gets a little out of control. But I tried to control it. I wanted to control it enough so that it was based on the things that I love, which are horror novels and thrillers, and it's also a fantasy. But there's an element of young love in the story in terms of the relationship that takes place between Jonathan and Marguerite. Now, that's a relationship that wasn't supposed to happen because she was destined for something completely different. She has something that she needs to do in terms of maintaining the power and control of her family to ensure that she marries the right person. Jonathan is not that guy. So that's the basis of the Stillin. The Stillin is actually quite a bit more, but I'm going to leave it for the reader to interpret on their own. But I wanted to explore it beyond just the writing. So when I was writing the story, I was imagining what these characters looked like, what these scenes were like, what it would have felt like to be in a time where there were no highways and the automobile was still a luxury and light bulbs in rural areas were not really a thing yet. And I found that investment into my creativity from a visual standpoint was another mechanism that served the story. And this project, this writing outcome has become the largest single creative endeavor, artistic project that I've done in my entire life. It's taken me 1.5 years to get to the point from starting it to completion. And that's working on it 7 days a week. And I found that it was easy for me to go back to it because I found that there was more to the story than what I originally thought I was writing. and hiding this other layer within the story of, well, myth and mysticism, magic, and, well, certain element of truth, and tying together the different layers of cultural connection from around the world and their relationships to these things that have been tied into folklore, into religion. And I'm Icelandic, and my earliest ancestors would have believed in Thor and would have believed in Loki. Now, Loki was a shapeshifter, but there was other elements of folklore that were tied into shapeshifters. And I found that interesting because around the same time period, the Egyptians also believed in the Sphinx, and they also believed in a number of different gods that had these, well, they were sort of hybrids. And the same with the Hindu and the indigenous of North America. Now we have in Manitoba, there's a Manitou. Now the Manitou is a shapeshifter of sorts. In fact, Manitoba is named after the Manitou. And in the more arid climates of the United States, the indigenous believe in what they call a skinwalker. Now, these aren't necessarily things that are known in popular fiction, because in popular fiction, we mostly know werewolves and we know vampires, and those things, for me, have been oversaturated. And I wanted to explore something completely new. I wanted to take my story in a new direction, and I think I accomplished that. So I'm going to go a little bit further in the next video. So if you want to know more about the story and its origins and the artwork, stay tuned.